welcome to the Daily Scripture Podcast. My name is Jerome Lavelle, and I hope that you are having a peaceful day today. Today we will be looking at John 17, verses 11 through 19. Lifting up his eyes to heaven, Jesus prayed, saying, Holy Father, keep them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one just as we are one. When I was with them, I protected them in your name that you gave me, and I guarded them, and none of them was lost except the son of destruction, in order that the scripture might be fulfilled. But now I am coming to you. I speak this in the world, so that they may share my joy completely. I gave them your word, and the world hated them, because they do not belong to the world any more than I belong to the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. They do not belong to the world any more than I belong to the world. Consecrate them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I send them into the world, and I consecrate myself for them, so that they also may be consecrated in truth. Today in the Gospel of John, chapter 17, verses 11 through 19, we hear Jesus speaking directly, thoughtfully, and emotionally to God the Father. His conversation is not focused on the Father or on himself, but rather on the community of believers that had been planted by him. If these words sound like a prayer, that is because they are a prayer. The first begins, lifting his eyes to heaven, Jesus prayed. And in looking at that prayer, Jesus specifically asks God to keep them in your name, keep them from the evil one, consecrate them in truth. And he's speaking here of the disciples, which to me says he wants God to draw them in, anoint them, and protect them. Recall that just before this passage in John, Jesus had told his disciples that he was going to the Father and that they would grieve, but ultimately that they would be filled with joy. And he then prays to God that he will be glorified. And then lastly, today's passage where he prays directly for the disciples. In these verses, he's making his last preparation with them. He encourages them, he informs them, he strengthens them, and then today he prays over them. And that is my reflection today. The example of the way that Jesus prays over those he loves. Again, asking God to draw them close, hold them, and protect them. So here's a question for me. In my prayer life, am I routinely praying to God for the needs of others? For example, those in my family or my friends, my neighbors, those at work, those in my faith community. Am I praying for the needs of strangers? Am I praying for those who have afflictions or addictions, those suffering physically or spiritually? Do I pray to God and ask God to guide and protect teachers in schools at all level, clergy and all in religious life, government officials at all levels, local to federal, those in the military and other safety and policing functions, those who serve in prisons and other jobs in government, those who work in social and family services? Am I praying for those in the medical services, doctors, nurses, residents, interns, PAs, and all others in the allied medical fields? Am I praying for those who lead charitable and service organizations and or many, many, many other important roles in our society? To me, today, Jesus is leading by example. Thessalonians 5:7 tells us to pray without ceasing. And we hear in Matthew 7, ask and it will be given unto you. Jesus tells us In James 2:16, the prayer of a righteous believer is powerful and effective. Today, Jesus is reminding me of the power of prayer to our Creator. For myself, yes, but also, and maybe especially, for others in this world who need our prayers. Thank you for joining the Daily Scripture Podcast. My name is Jerome Lavelle, and remember, our word of the day is sending prayers for others to God's ears. Until next time, be well and be blessed.